to one of its instantiations. But then, again, from the perspective of the abstract universal, the immediate individual is necessarily the inessential element in the judgment logos, and therefore is not self-subsistent. The universal does not need the individual for the realization of his existence, but the individual must be subsumed, subsumed, under the universal if it is to have the character it actually has. But this complexity, that each of the relata both is and is not self-subsistent, makes it clear, for me at least, that the dialectic cannot deal with these two perspectives simultaneously. For in the context of immediacy, each one of them is unambiguously self-subsistent. It should therefore first develop the relation of inherence, and only then the relation of subsumption. Since, however, the speculative dialectic is fundamentally dynamic and continuous, one would expect the two developments to be immanently linked, and not just posited next to one another. This is indeed the case, for the relation of inherence characterizes the whole sphere of the first kind of judgment, the judgment of determinate being, and which then gives rise to the second, the judgment of reflection, which is characterized by the relation of subsumption. My characterization of the beginning of the dialectic of the judgment will not be complete unless I also clarify the character of the third self-subsistent element of the cognitive. This denotes the intrinsic and primordial unity of the concept with the differential treatment of judgment, and hence secures its objectivity. But the self-subsistence of the copula is determined by the suppression of its immanent speculative meaning. The result is twofold. On the one hand, the copula acquires simply the meaning that better suits the two external relations of inherence and subsumption. On the other hand, it acquires the meaning of simple or absolute identity or sheer tautology, we blossom in the death. From this second significance, we can deduce that the explication of the unity of the concept requires the incorporation or parallel manifestation of the difference of the relata and not its elimination. But since the copula must appear initially through its self-subsistence, and since such an appearance does not do justice to its true meaning, the dialectic of the judgment can be seen as the process whereby the meaning of the copula is fulfilled, is fulfilled. As Hegel puts it, in the context of immediacy, the unity of the concept is not yet a concrete, fulfilled unity which returns into itself from this reality of self-subsistence. Thus, I emphasize this, the dialectic of the judgment is a return into the original unity of the concept, and this denotes the fulfillment of the meaning of the copula. Of course, in the context of immediacy, where the judgment first appears, the copula appears to be saying that the relata are identical. But the way in which it says that, namely immediately, hinders the explication of their identity in terms of the concept. This deficient content of the copula, what Hegel calls the abstract is, underlies all three problematic connections of the relata: inherence, subsumption, and simple identity. By the end of the dialectic, all this should be sublated in the successful explication of the identity of the concept in the sphere of the judgment, which would thus become expressive of the true meaning of the copula. Yeah, conclusion? Okay. Hegel's prelude to the dialectic of the judgment has introduced us to its most prominent features. The conception of the judgment is the objective unity of subject and predicate, offers the missing link for the refutation of Pyrrhonian skepticism. For now, the conflicts between judgments in the universe of rational discourse acquire the significance of the molding of the self-determined subject matter. In other words, if scientific inquiry takes place in the sphere of reason, the conflicting predicates assigned to the subject emerge absolutely from the concept itself, from what there is in truth. It is no longer up to anyone's mind to characterize being by means of positive judgments in the universe of rational discourse. Rather, each and every judgment that appears in that universe is the self-externalization of the concept of reason. Note that Pyrrhonian skepticism is not refuted simply through the immanent emergence of conflicting and unifying relations from the positing of the simple methodology of being. Without the thematization of the logical structure of the judgment, the expression of such relations will remain susceptible to the Pyrrhonian problematic. The conflicting judgments will still denote a purely negative relation, and the higher judgment that unites them will still be in need of being associated with the concept development, if it is to have a content that goes beyond both the mere conjunction of the relata and its own immediacy. The objectivation of the judgment assigns a positive character to the conflict and transforms the higher judgment into the unitary locus of the concept itself. Note, equally importantly, however, that on the other side, the judgment's emergence in the logical corpus requires the preceding existence of a process of conflict and unification of truth claims of reason. Hegel couldn't just throw a theory of judgment in the universe of discourse. So Hegel's major contribution to the theory of judgment and epistemology in general is the idea that in the sphere of reason, the judgment is not a verbindung of concepts, which are originally non-connected, but rather the explicit way the individual concept determines itself when it has an appearance in the universe of rational discourse. Yet, this part of the theory must be immediately supplemented with a second, which says that the proof of the objectivity of the judgment requires also its emergence or return from subjectivity, from representation and common sense. I quote, "To restore, or better posit, this true identity of the concept is the goal of the movement of the judgment," end of quote. Diese Identität des Begriffs wiederherzustellen oder vielmehr zu setzen, ist das Ziel der Bewegung des Urteils. This emergence shall take place in terms of an explication, whereby the implicit content of the judgment becomes explicit, or whereby what's simply there, what appears, unfolds its implicit content. Thus, according to this part of the theory, the initial positing of the judgment in the universe of rational discourse falls short of the truth of the concept. Here's how Hegel puts it, quote, "However, insofar as the judgment is in general the determinate being, or the other being of the concept, which has not yet restored itself in that unity through which it exists as concept, the determinacy that comes forth is conceptless, begriffless, the opposition of being and implicit being. The proof of the objectivity of the judgment then requires two steps. One, its immanent emergence from the pure concept, and B, the explication of the concept's implicit content in the sphere of the judgment. This second step refers to the process through which the meaning of the copula is fulfilled. The result should be a full account of what it means for the judgment to be a locus of the concept's truth, namely the whole concept, not just of one of its determinations. So, strangely enough, speculative logic provides a definitive refutation, in my opinion, of Pyrrhonian skepticism, only to take that proof back and demand a return to it. Thus, until that return is accomplished, the Pyrrhonian problematic remains unresolved. Thank you.
Sadece kısaca bir toparlayalım. Bay Sokrates, Hegel'in kurgulu yargı kuramında özellikle de yargıda Pyrrhonik kuşkuculuğun çöküşünü göstermeye çalıştı. Yargı kategorisinin iç diyalektiğine değinerek kavram ve mantıksal yargı arasındaki ilişkiye oradan özne ve yüklemin doğasına ve bunların arasındaki birliği ve birliği içindeki ayrımı göstererek bu çözülmeyi göstermeye çalıştı. Bay Iber'in konuşmasında da Hegel'in mantık biliminin bilginin ve düşüncenin biçimlerini açıklayan bir bilim olarak o bilim olduğunu söyledi. Varlık mantığının ve öz mantığının eksik düşünceyi ya da eksik bilgiyi eleştirel bir şekilde anlatırken kavram mantığının kavram mantığının hakikate ulaşan düşünce biçimlerini ele aldığını söyledi. Bu düşünce biçimlerinin hakikati amaçlaması ve bir şekilde bilmeyle son bulduğunu söyledi. Bu düzeye dek de Hegel'in mantık biliminin bilme bilimi olduğunu söyledi. Yine de Hegel'in mantığını modern mantık ve bilim kuramlarından ayrılması gerektiğini ve ancak bu şekilde Hegel'e özgün olan mantığın anlaşılacağını söyledi ve bunu kanıtlamak için de kavram mantığına girdi ve burada da kavram, yargı ve tasım kavramlarını açıkladı. Şimdi bunu açıklamaya tekrar gerek yok. Sorularınızı alayım ben. Ich eröffne die Diskussion und bitte um Beiträge. Professor Söser.
Hegel says somewhere in logic that every judgment contains a negation of negation. How that means there is not only a passage from subject to predicate, but also a return from the predicate to subject. How do you understand this negation of negation according to your interpretation of the judgment as an expression of concept in the judgment itself?
Right. I see the return of the predicate to the subject. I see the return happening in the second kind of judgment, which is the judgment of reflection. I think so. The first judgment is the judgment of determining being. Gesundheit des Daseins shows some kind of movement from the subject to the predicate. While there's judgment of reflection, it shows some judgment from the predicate, which is the essential of this to the subject. But the third judgment, the judgment of necessity, is different state of affairs, but they are both together in the covenant, as Hegel says. So what's subsistent with the third judgment, Gesundheit der Notwendigkeit, is that we don't have this problem of return from the subject to the predicate to the subject. So, in my opinion, this occurs in the judgment of reflection.
Evet, buyurun.
Ja, ich habe zwei Fragen. Eine Frage an Herrn Lieber. Inwiefern, Ihrer Meinung nach, versteht Hegel das Urteil als Struktur in der Welt, als ontologische Struktur? Das heißt, was für ein Sinn steht hinter dem Satz, alle Dinge sind ein Urteil, Ihrer Meinung nach? And then I have a quick question to Yanis Marais, and that is simply, isn't there a structural problem with any judgment? Doesn't any judgment have a degree of immediacy which is going to expose it to Pyrrhonian skepticism? And isn't the way, in a sense, to counter Pyrrhonian skepticism to move on to the syllogism, as Hegel was explaining? You move on from judgment to Schluss, and it would seem that it's only through that movement to Schluss that the immediacy of judgments, which gives rise to Pyrrhonian skepticism, can be dealt with.
Herr Hegel, können Sie vielleicht die Frage an Herrn Iber auch auf Englisch formulieren, damit die anderen
Oh yes, sorry. Oh yes, the question for Herr Iber was a very simple one. It's just...
Herr Iber, sorusun tekrar İngilizceden alıyoruz.
What sense does Herr Iber see in Hegel's statement that all things are a judgment? And I was wondering, because Herr Iber's examples were of judgments in our old, more familiar sense, and I just wondered, given the conversation we'd had earlier, to what extent Herr Iber understands judgment to be